In today's video, we dive into a tangled web of betrayal and shocking secrets, a story where hidden affairs spiraled into devastating consequences. The mother of four was raising her kids with her long-term boyfriend, Deputy Fire Chief Robert Dowse. In July 2020, though, Grace died suddenly, and their lives would never be the same. Some investigators and agents aren't so sure that Grace Holland really did kill herself in front of Robert, even though the official report says that she did. But before we get into the full story, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more real-life crime stories, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. And let me know in the comment, which country are you watching from? I want to know how far this case is reaching around the world. Let's get into it. Even though Grace used her right hand, the wound was on her left. Grace's family and friends don't agree with Robert's claim that she was very sad. Grace also left a note at the crime scene that was written by hand, but many people say that anyone can read it and know it isn't hers. The strangest thing is that Robert's new girlfriend, Dr. Sarah Sweeney, died right in front of him 3 years after Grace did. There seems to be a misunderstanding between Robert and everyone else, but new information in the probe changes everything. This is going to be weird, so I hope you're all ready. Grace Holland and her boyfriend, Robert Dowse, lived together in Creve Coeur, Missouri in 2020. Grace was known for having a lot of energy and being pretty happy. When she and Robert met for the first time, around 2016, Grace had just ended a tough marriage that didn't go so well. However, she and her ex-husband stayed friendly after the divorce, mostly for the sake of their kids. It's funny, but Grace was most impressed by Robert's car when they first met. People were very interested in Robert because he drove a Porsche to and from work. People in the area knew him as a man of high morals who would fight for peace and justice whenever he could. Since he was the Maryland Heights fire captain, he had a lot of responsibility to keep up, and he seemed to be doing a great job. In the Maryland Heights area, everyone knew Robert and looked up to him. For many young boys and girls in the area, he was the guy to be. Robert was not only active with the local fire department, but he was also very close with the police department. This was mostly because of his job, but it was also because he was well known in the area. Really amazing is that Robert wasn't the only one in his family who dedicated their lives to helping others. He actually came from a family of first responders. His father was the fire captain of Maryland Heights and gave Robert the title when he retired. This alone shouldn't be enough to convince you of Robert Dowse's character. His family also runs a small business called Liberty Artworks, which makes monuments for fallen police and fire officers. Robert's dad started this business in his spare time to help the families of soldiers who died in action. It was love at first sight for Robert when he met Grace. They both had problems from past relationships, but they were both able to handle them. Grace brought her 4 kids from her first marriage, and Robert brought his son from a past relationship. Grace thought Robert was the best thing ever. People knew that Grace had a lot of respect for first responders, police officers, investigators, firefighters, and everyone else in that line of work. She had always wanted to help people get justice. When she was a youngster, she joined the Police Explorer program as a way to do just that. For teens who want to learn more about how police investigations work and how officers find suspects and bring them to justice, this program is for you. In the end, Grace chose to study criminal justice when she finished from high school and went to college. Following her graduation, she volunteered her time and skills to help the police and the people in her neighborhood whenever she could. From what I can tell, Grace never got to use her degree in criminal justice because it seems like her first child was born right after she got it. Pretty soon, she spent most of her time taking care of her 4 kids. After some time, Grace met Robert and was able to become what her sister called a police wife. This meant that she could be a full-time stay-at-home mom while Robert helped pay the bills, put out fires, and solved crimes. It looks like this was a dream come true for Grace. She loved her kids more than anything else and couldn't picture herself anywhere else but with them. But evil struck. We don't know the exact times, but Grace heard the worst news any mother could hear sometime in 2020. She had unfortunately lost the baby. For several months, she and Robert had been trying to have a child of their own. As soon as they found out they were pregnant, they lost the baby. It was clear that Grace was in a lot of pain after this loss. I'm not even going to try to understand the heartache, grief, and crushing feelings that come with something like this. The woman who used to be happy and upbeat had become a shell of herself overnight. I don't understand how she got into such a deep sadness. She was seeing a doctor about it, but the drugs didn't seem to help with the scary thoughts. There are a lot of sources that say this was pretty much the end for Grace. Robert also seems to have said this. However, no one in Grace's family ever thought he would be so right. The crime. It was July 22, 2020. Grace's twin sister, Laura Holland, got a Facebook message that she couldn't believe when she woke up. "Is it true your sister is dead?" asked one of her friends. She was shocked for a moment because she had no idea what was going on or what her friend was talking about. The friend who texted her was a teacher at the school where Laura's niece Grace goes. This teacher had heard about it from the school's security officer. Laura's friendship with her sister ended all of a sudden, and Grace never said a word. Laura says that she was shocked when she heard the news. Each member of her family heard the sad news of Grace's death one by one, as she called them. One of Grace's 4 daughters was waiting for her mother to come home so that she and her mother could go shoe shopping together when the news came out. That trip would never happen, which was one of the saddest parts of the whole thing. Grace didn't show up, and her kids never saw her again. It was around 5:10 a.m. when the news first came through. No one had told Robert Dowse about the tragedy before he called 911 and quietly said that he was the fire captain of Maryland Heights. He told the operator that Grace had killed herself with a weapon right in front of him after months of being depressed. He didn't stutter or sigh at all. When the first rescuers got there, they quickly found out that Robert hadn't tried any kind of resuscitation or to save Grace's life in case she had survived the blow. This was the first warning sign. After that, the coroner found out that Grace had been hit once in the head on her left side, with the bullet going slightly downward. But Grace was right-handed, so wouldn't she have had the gun in her right hand if she was going to kill herself? The second red flag was this. It was strange that Robert called his lawyer right after the cops arrived at the crime scene to collect evidence. Before Robert talked to any of the police officers who came to the scene of the crime, he told his lawyer about it all. His lawyer told him what he should and shouldn't say to the police. The third warning sign was this. Investigators found 2 notes that were left at the crime scene. They were both handwritten by Grace on the day she died. She talks to her girls in the first note and tells them how proud she is of them and how they're going to do great things in their lives. In the second note, she writes to Robert and tells him that she hopes he could see that life is about more than just things and money. "Goodbye, my love," is what she writes at the end of the letter. After this, Robert wasn't really looked into much in the days and weeks that followed. The case was pretty much over. Grace was said to have killed herself because she was depressed. And that was that. In the end, everyone in the area knew that Robert was one of the most honest people there. They didn't think badly of him. Instead, they felt bad for him. But Laura knew something was wrong as soon as she heard that Robert had hired a lawyer before he was even thought to be a suspect. Later, it turned out that Grace had told her sister Laura that Robert wasn't the man he seemed to be in the months before she died suddenly. Grace said that Robert was very violent and that the abuse got worse over time. So bad did it get that she decided to start keeping records of everything. She even recorded Robert abusing her so she would have proof to use against him in court if she ever had to. Laura remembered seeing Grace with a lot of marks. It was clear that the fighting was getting out of hand. Grace made the mistake of playing one of her recordings for Robert one night. She wanted him to hear himself on the tape and understand how mean he was being. He didn't, which is too bad. He made things worse by listening to Grace's claims and his own voice on the recording. Grace's family knows that this was a terrible mistake. Grace was so upset by Robert's increasingly strange behavior that she called the deputy chief medical officer for Maryland Heights Fire in the hopes that he could help her figure out why Robert had been acting so mean lately. Based on what I can tell, this man pretty much avoided her calls and requests for answers, and the whole thing was brushed off. Laura says Grace really thought she could help Robert. She thought there was something she could do to help him, and she even tried to get them both into counseling, but it clearly didn't work. It seems like Robert got more and more angry over time, and if Grace's family is true, he finally lost it. Grace's family says that Robert's behavior towards her was completely wrong. She was being told how to spend her time and with whom she could spend it. He was controlling every part of her life. It was up to him to decide how much petrol money she could use for her car and when and how often she could see her other children. No one even showed up to Grace's funeral, her sister Laura said when she talked about it. She says that none of Grace's friends showed up to her funeral because Robert made her break up with everyone she knew. After a particularly bad experience at dinner with Grace and Robert, her best friend had even cut ties with her in the weeks before she died. The exact details of what happened at that dinner have never been fully released. Laura says Robert even made Grace quit her job and work for his business, Liberty Artworks, but for some reason he wouldn't put her name on the salary. All of her payments were made under the table, which meant she couldn't get any perks from the job and couldn't show any income on the couple's taxes. In fact, Robert was the only person she could rely on for almost everything. He even wrote her monthly under-the-table checks. Crime Scoop says that Robert didn't waste any time after Grace died. He quickly packed his things and left the couple's house. He now lives in a new house that he and Grace actually chose together a few weeks before the tragedy. Laura says that Grace chose every single light fixture, every single fireplace detail, and everything else. A few days after the move, Robert was heard telling people in town that he had, quote, 1 foot out of their relationship for months before Grace died. He said this was how he was able to move on so quickly. It's clear that this remark bothers me. Most people thought Robert was a jerk who didn't care about what was going on, not a heartbroken partner who had just lost the love of his life. From what he told his friends and acquaintances, he didn't seem to be sad or sorry about what he did. In fact, he seemed almost happy that the relationship was over so quickly and without much warning. He didn't say anything about Grace that made her sound like she was a victim of her own mental health or of his. Crime Scoop says that instead, he made her look like she was only desperate and crazy. Now, though, things really start to go crazy. We've all heard true crime cases with quick, shocking turns. This one is really crazy. There was some very interesting information that the cops learned about Grace, the events that led up to her death, and many parts of Robert's life that happened after Grace died. It was strange that Robert hadn't been true to Grace in a very, very long time. A husband who beats his wife and cheats on her. Never. That's not what's crazy, though. He was crazy because he wasn't just seeing other women, he was also seeing other guys. This is a fact. Police got this information from text messages that Robert's lawyer pulled that had some information blacked out. At about the same time, Robert broke up with Grace's family, including the 4 girls she had given him to care for a few years. He just shut down and walked away, like turning off a light switch. He never spoke to them again. He never asked to be a part of Grace's funeral, and I still don't know if he even went. It got so bad that he told the Maryland Heights Fire Department to never talk to Grace's family again. In the eyes of Grace's family and friends, Robert pretty much stopped existing after that. He was gone from their lives in the blink of an eye. Sometime around this time, detectives from the Creve Coeur Police Department chose to get in touch with Robert to get his statement and talk to him about the death of his wife. He was taken into a room where he was questioned and asked to write down and speak on what he knew. The whole thing was taped as proof. The recording was erased, though, as soon as he left the room that day. In their defense, the Creve Coeur Police Department says this was just a computer glitch. But to be honest, I'm not so sure. Because Robert was friendly with the local police, is it really that unlikely that he said something he shouldn't have and a friend at the police station helped get rid of the tape? As a rule, I try to stay neutral in situations like this and only present facts and proof. But this is getting too much for me to ignore. Even worse, there was a video of Robert arguing with his young son, but it was deleted while it was in the police's hands for some reason. This tape could have been used against Robert in court to show that he really was the violent person Grace said he was. Now that this tape was gone too, though, he was free to go. It was already pretty bad, but things were about to get a lot worse. Following the death of her sister, Laura Holland has contacted several news sources and given them a long list of crimes and mistakes she thinks the Creve Coeur Police Department made. Laura says that when the coroner looked into the crime scene, he or she didn't properly identify Grace's entry and exit wounds. Police gave the wrong information about where Robert was when Grace died. Robert himself said he was standing right next to her, but some police reports say he wasn't. They didn't get rid of Robert's friends from the investigation. They closed the crime scene before talking to his family. They didn't look into an engagement ring that wasn't at the scene of the crime. They didn't get forensic evidence from either Robert's or Grace's hands to show who really held the gun that night. They lost several video recordings. They didn't record the obvious bruises on Grace's body. They didn't check the handwriting on the letters found at the scene of the crime. And you may remember that I talked about the notes that were found at the crime scene and how the cops never checked the handwriting on them. Anyway, Gavin Fish did a great job putting together the evidence for this case. He found scans of the notes that were found at the crime scene as well as other examples of Grace's handwriting from when she filled out forms or made notes in the weeks or months before the crime. Take a look at this picture. The picture on the left is from the note that Grace is said to have written to her children on the day she died. The picture on the right comes from some sticky notes that Grace left behind for some reason. Here's the thing. I've heard a lot of people say that they are worried that this handwriting doesn't match. Grace's sister Laura also seems to think that the writing doesn't belong to Grace. But I have to be honest, I don't see any big changes between the confirmed handwriting on the right and the alleged handwriting on the left. I've circled the words love and proud in both pictures to make it easy to see that they are the same words written a few weeks apart. I don't think they look that different. There's no doubt that the story would be more interesting if the script was different. Not at all. That doesn't even remotely call into question Laura's claims against Robert. But let me know if you guys see something in this writing that I don't. I think it's pretty clear that Grace wrote all of these notes. Now, though, this is where things take yet another bad turn. From what Laura has said about Robert and what she has said about him, it's pretty clear that she thinks he had something to do with Grace's death. Either he killed her directly or he used his and manipulation to get her to kill herself. However, I think I can pretty much disprove the idea that Robert killed Grace. Now, because of how the next few photos are made, I can't show them all in this video. If I did, YouTube would take it down so quickly it would make your head spin. But while the police were looking into Grace's death, they found a number of texts and pictures that she sent to her family or to Robert. These texts and pictures give Grace a very different look. Within one picture, Grace sent a picture of the gun she would use to kill herself. At the same time, texts that said goodbye came through. You let me down. I loved you. Tell the girls I love them. The police also found another picture of the same gun, which was probably taken around the same time. Other than that, there was a picture of Grace holding a whole bottle of pills, which were antipsychotic drugs that her doctor had recommended. Last but not least, there is a picture of Grace holding the gun she would soon use to kill herself. As the wound was described in the coroner's report, the most shocking and worrying thing about this picture is that she's holding the gun in her left hand, even though she was right-handed. This pretty much rules out that idea. So, here's the question. Did Robert have anything to do with Grace's death? It's hard for me to believe he wasn't. According to Robert, Grace would lose her temper at the strangest times after their loss. But who could blame her? You can't even begin to understand how much she was hurting unless you've been through it yourself. Not only was she naturally sad about the loss of the baby, but her body was also chemically reacting badly to it, so she could only control so much of her behavior. Adding Robert's to this wouldn't have made things better at all. There is a lot of evidence that he hated and hurt Grace, so it's pretty much a given that he had something to do with her deciding to kill herself. He didn't actually do it, but his actions definitely pushed her that direction. But is that enough to find him guilty in some way? I'm not sure, though. The local cops have erased a lot of the evidence against him, so I don't think this man will ever be put in jail. We still need to talk about one more part of this story, though. How about Robert's new girlfriend, Dr. Sarah Sweeney? For the same reason as Grace, she died right in front of Robert. If you need help with problems with your feet or ankles, Dr. Sarah Sweeney is a doctor and a podiatrist. She just started her own business in Creve Coeur, Missouri. She was told when she was young that she had Perthes disease, a condition that affects the joints in the hips and makes it very hard to walk. However, we do not know exactly when she met Robert Dowse, but it looks like they had been dating for a while when she suddenly passed away in his home. The local cops said she didn't seem traumatized, and her lawyer says she had been sick with a condition that could have killed her. But the coroner's report says she died of an overdose of painkillers. I think these were the same drugs that were used to treat her Perthes disease, but but I haven't checked this, so officially there is no link between Sarah's death and Robert. The only thing that does is that in the months before she died, Sarah spoke out against Robert, telling people close to her that she thought he might have had something to do with how Grace died. His girlfriend said this. The woman she was close to said she lived in fear of Robert all day and didn't know how to obtain freedom. We know that Sarah just started her own podiatry practice in Missouri, but this only happened after she sued her old boss for wrongful termination, saying that she was sexually harassed, discriminated against because of her disability, and discriminated against because of her gender at work. If we look at the counterclaims that her previous employer filed, they say that she was fired because she had problems with her mental and physical health that made it impossible for her to do her job properly. She said in one of her speeches that she had been homeless, felt hopeless, and couldn't even properly register her car in Missouri because the windscreen and headlight were broken and she didn't have the money to fix them. When we put all of this together with Sarah's sudden death from an overdose, what do we think about it? Is it possible that Robert also had something to do with her death? Yes, of course, especially since she says she was scared of him just like Grace had been. What I don't understand is how this investigation can stand on its own when we only look at the facts. Just like Grace, Sarah was clearly going through a lot of trouble in the months before she died. She died of an overdose, which makes you wonder if she had taken too much. But it also makes you wonder if Robert might have had something to do with the overdose. It wouldn't have been hard to do. He would have had easy access to all of her medicines if they lived together. In the end, though, there are too many unanswered questions to be sure of what happened. Both of the women who died next to this guy in his own home had very well-known mental health problems. It just seems so strange to me that they both died so quickly, followed by each other. Another thing that strikes me as odd is that they both thought he was controlling, scary, and, in Sarah's words, capable of killing his ex-lover. Not surprisingly, this is yet another case that doesn't have a happy finish or a silver lining. There is no lesson to be learned here, only sadness and heartbreak for both families of those concerned. Robert is still being investigated, which is good. I hope that one day the truth will come out if he really did play a part in either of these crimes. Sad to say, the story still hasn't been solved yet. That's the end of this case. It's a sad story and a reminder to always be careful. See you in the next video, and stay safe.